Hello, everybody. It's Friday. That means it's time for another topic of the week. First things first, last week's topic on Warhammer Skirmish. I think there's a lot of people who are excited for it. I think the worst reactions more or less were meh, as in didn't really care, or people who were sad that the rules weren't as expansive as, say, something like a Mordheim, right? That we're talking about a relatively simple framework here of rules, which I can empathize with. And that actually leads me right into this week's topic of the week. So, without any kind of other preamble, we're just going to jump straight in. So, as to the complexity of Warhammer Skirmish, or how much, complexity maybe is the wrong word. How about the amount of options, the depth to explore in the game? That seems fair. Uh, Tom and I have already talked. We mentioned this on the show, but Tom, my co-host from Warhammer Weekly, we're going to be doing a rules pack for Warhammer Skirmish to align it to a fuller experience, a la something classic like Mordheim. We'll make that available and free out there for everybody to just use and play with and demo. Before we finalize it, we'll put it out for test and stuff like that. So there'll be a future topic of the week here in a couple weeks once we finish up all the rules. We already sketched out the framework of everything we want to do and sort of set out our guiding principles, set out the framework of how we're, the various things we want to touch on, that sort of stuff. So that's coming. But that led me to think about this. One of the things that I think is that we as the community can obviously patch or add to or support or however you want to think about it, rule sets or things like that in our games. And I don't mind doing it. I actually rather love doing it. I love a nice, simple framework of a game that lets me build on it in lots of different ways. I don't need the company to do everything, nor do I personally feel like they're letting me down by not including it, because they could end up including a bunch of other stuff that I don't particularly care for, but now have to deal with. So I think it's always easier for me, but to add to it than worry about trying to shave off. But that's probably distinct to my background, being that I've been doing this now for like 13 years, is designing games. And that actually got me thinking about it. Of how do you feel about community-driven rule sets, expansions, things like that? I think within the Age of Sigmar, it's interesting because I'm willing to bet if I had asked this question 3 years ago, the outlook on it might have been slightly different. But in the Age of Sigmar and the people who continue playing it throughout the transition and onward, there's been a lot of evolution of community-driven efforts, whether it be through the original comp packs that came out, Azir and MoComp and Clash Comp and so on and so forth, or whether it be through simple other things like the Hinterlands and AOS 28 and so on and so forth. There's been a lot more community involvement and push to sort of not have our experience in the game defined solely by what appears in officially printed products. And that's interesting to me. I hope that's the case. I've always been one that's been happy to write rules for my personal game or to expand them out in a broader sense. And so I'm excited about this project. But one of the things that made me wonder is, what do people think about it? And I'm not asking you what you think about us adding on to the skirmish rules, providing a more Mordheim-like experience. You can be excited for that or not, and if you want to include that in your response, that's fine. But this isn't like an ego-driven thing. I'm not trying to have you pre-validate my effort on this. We're going to do this. Even if the audience of it was myself and Tom, I would still be happy to do it. But more, it made me think about community-driven rule sets in general. Do you appreciate them? Do you want to give them a look? Obviously, they're not official product, so adoption can always be a challenge. And that's, I think, the major thing, is when you take them to your gaming group and you say, here's this thing I got off the internet, it's eye roll city immediately, right? Just like, oh, you got it off the internet, and I get that. Because I think that it can easily be the case that you do have to sift through, right? There can often be a lot of stuff produced, but it can often be a lot like fan fiction, as it were, right? Like a lot of it doesn't end up, just kind of ends up being cotton candy. It's there and gone. So, but what do you feel about those community-driven type of projects things? Do you mind sifting through? When you find something really good, are you willing to take it to your group to give it a try to play it? So that's my question. That's the topic of the week this week. Community-driven content. There you go. That's the words. In all the war games you play, any war game. You know, it's interesting to note that, I mean, I would be remiss if I didn't mention in this that when you look at something like the Ninth Age, that entire thing is a community-driven content creation, right? I mean, that's what it is. Given that it's a little more rigorous in its organizational, sort of framework, but it is a community-driven project. So it's just interesting to me of how you react to either sort of options. Take, for example, Tyler Mingle's, Endless Deserts, where he put out the Tomb King's Battle Tome. That sort of thing. That's a community-driven content project. And I was happy to be involved in that in any way. I thought it was great. So, that's this week's topic. Your view on community-driven content. Do you like it? Do you find your group is accepting of it, or do you have to work really hard, or do they just go, nope, it's all from the internet, it's not from the company, so get it out of here. Don't want it. You know, what's the attitude they take? What's been your experience with it? And if you're feeling froggy, you can say what you think about us adding to the rules of skirmish, but you don't have to. So, as always, drop your comments down below on what you think. Let me know what you think about it. And if you make a video response, I'll link that video right down here, so you can always return back to this video and go out to all the other ones. And of course, last week's video, well, that's also linked down there too, so you can go back, watch that, and watch all the great responses to that. Okay? So as always, thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you next time.